So you started getting into more film projects.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the stuff you worked on.
Chris and I started a production company, Footage Films, about 3 years ago. And so far, we've done like 4 of our films were on Netflix. And they were like #1 trending, number one films on Netflix. And, we just was like, let's start doing our own movies. We had done You Got Served, well, he'd done You Got Served. He wrote and directed You Got Served.
Right, which blew up.
Yeah, which is like, changed the history of the world as far as dance.
Were you involved in that or no?
No, I was in it.
You were in it? Yeah, sorry, yeah. But you weren't in the production.
No, production, nah, I wasn't doing it back then. So, he was like, I feel like I could do this on my own. We can start our own company. And I got into writing scripts and stuff like that. I would write out stories and stuff like that. So, I started writing scripts, and we did this comedy called Will to Love for TV One. That was like our first project that we had done independently. And then from there, we started going. We did Weekend with the Family, which was myself and Karrueche, came out in the theaters, and that went to Netflix. And then we did a couple of Netflix originals and stuff like that. So, we've been able to be successful with our films, with our independent films, and now we have our first theatrical film called Till Death Do Us Part coming out September 29th.
Right, with Taye Diggs.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is actually going to theaters.
Yes, this is going to theaters.
Which means that the budget has to be way higher.
Yep.
The marketing budget probably exceeds that of the actual production of the film.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No.
But so it's like it's a blessing definitely to just watch things build. We started out, like I said, 3 years ago, and who knew it would be here. But it's definitely amazing to be able to work with such talent as Taye Diggs and even Annie, Alonzo, and Stephen Bishop, and to watch the company go from here to here and putting out a theatrical with Novus Films. And it's just for me, to watch, the best thing for me is, starting out on the paper, actually writing the material, and then watching it come to life and watch the actors just bring these characters to life. And then you watch it go from being on set to like now coming out in the movie theaters, and you just hope people love it. It's a really interesting story. It's a very, very good film. It's about domestic violence, which is something that a lot of people go through, men and women. People would think it's just women, but a lot of men go through it as well. And it's an issue that is not really, it's not really talked about too much, but a lot of people support domestic violence victims and everything like that. So I think this movie is really about getting away from it and finding that strength to move out of the situation, because so many people get stuck in that situation they can't leave. But that's what this film is about. It's about finding your strength to actually leave. So,
well, you mentioned you did a project with Karrueche.
Yeah.
Remember there was that whole thing where you made a comment on her picture, and then Chris Brown said, "Go home, Roger."
Yeah. Chris Brown's actually been a friend of mine since we were younger, so it was.
So you guys are actually friends?
Yeah, people blew that out of proportion. But the internet always blows things out of proportion. That's just what they do. It was nothing to it. He just said, "Go home, Roger." It's like a joke, whatever. I was like, ha ha.
How was it working with Karrueche as an actress? 'Cause I know she's done some TV
she's
stuff
actually,
as well.
People are like, it was surprising because people don't really, coming from a situation, you date Chris Brown and you all of a sudden, people look at her as like, oh, you just a girl that dated Chris Brown. She's actually super talented. She's been acting for a long time, and it was fun to work with Karrueche because I've known Karrueche since she was 16. So we all kind of grew up together. And to be able to work with her in that light was it was amazing to be able to see her be such a really well coached actress. She's not just a socialite or just a pretty face that's popular. I think she's really, really talented, and we actually did 2 movies with her. I did one, A Weekend with the Family, and we also did Only for One Night with her and Brian White. And then to watch her career just progress, and now her being on Claws and everything like that, I'm just so proud to see her do her thing, because she's really, really talented and she deserves it.
You started out as a child star at 12 years old.
Yeah.
But you never really hear any of the stereotypical pitfalls that you went through that a lot of your contemporaries went through.
Yeah.
Having a bunch of kids, filing for bankruptcy, arrested, crazy looking mugshots.
Yeah.
Like, how come Marques Houston was able to steer clear of all that?
My upbringing, I feel like, having a solid foundation and having a good management team. Like Chris was always, he was always very adamant about not allowing us to go there. You know, he always felt like keep your relationships first, always stay humble, families first. That's what's important. This industry can take you and it can swallow you up, so don't let it. So like I said, when we made that pact when we were younger, it was friends first, friendship first. That's what we always told ourselves. Like, this industry doesn't really mean anything, because, you know, it doesn't matter how much money you can make. We saw all the pitfalls of all these people, you know, child stars and what they went through, and we always was like, we're not gonna be that. We people first, you know, and that's what was important to us. And, you know, the being humble, being around the right people is very, very important, because, you know, you can be around the wrong crowd and they can influence you to do so much to where you just, especially if you're young, you just following suit. And I've always been, for one, I've always kind of been like a leader in my own right. I've never been the kind of person that likes to follow. I was never a follower. I was never a person that was highly influenced to do anything. Like, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't a dumb kid. Like, I was one of those kids that was very aware of my surroundings, very aware of the people I was around. Just like when we met the guy at the label, we was all like, man, he's a phony. Like, we knew what was up. We wasn't like kids that just be like, oh, we're kids. We want to just follow everybody to what they're doing. So we always really took that to heart and took it seriously to really stay around the right people and always keep a level head, because, you know, we didn't want that. I didn't want, you know, to be one of those kids that was in the news and just, you know, just wilding out. So, you know, stayed away from drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, because I knew what it would lead to.
I mean, a lot of times when people get money for the first time,
yeah,
and they're not used to having it,
yeah,
they mess it up. I know it happened to me.
Yeah.
First time I got money, I fucked it all off.
Yeah.
Had to start over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you talk about, you know, you grew up in a low-income neighborhood,
Yeah.
your mother's not used to handling hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
you know, that type of thing. Do you think that you made some good decisions back then, or do you think you kind of messed up back then and had to learn?
I think I made some really good decisions. You know, I don't think that I was able to make bad decisions because of the people that were around me that influenced me with my money. You know, like I said, I was a smart kid. I wasn't a dummy, and I knew how to handle my money and how to manage it. You know, so I always felt like I don't want to spend all my money. I've never been the kind of person that loved jewels and loved fancy this and fancy that, and I didn't have to have 10 million cars, because you can't drive 10 cars. You can only drive one. I was that guy. I'm like, I'm not putting rims on my car because it mess up the ride. You know what I'm saying? I was always that guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, if anything, I would spend my money on like gadgets and TVs and stuff like that. That was like my thing that I used to, you know, like to buy. And I'm a collector, so I would collect DVDs and I would collect CDs and do stuff like that. But I was never a real extravagant person. I just never felt the need to be, because I grew up not really caring what people thought about me. I never been the kind of person that feels like, oh, I got to go buy a Lamborghini because people is watching me. If I don't have a Lamborghini, then they going to think something. I'm like, I'll go drive a Prius, and who cares?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to keep my money. So, you know.
Save money on gas.
Yeah, I can think what you want, but, you know, that's just how I am.
I mean, so you mean to tell me you've never bought anything extravagant?
Not really.
Really?
Not really. I never really, like, you know, I don't really like extravagant things.